The Dallas Mavericks beat the OKC Thunder 117 to 116 to advance to the Western Conference Finals. This is actually the second time in 2 years that the Mavericks are going to the conference finals. I think this was really important for them as a franchise because there are a lot of people who could argue that when they went to the conference finals a few years ago, it was fluky and they couldn't replicate this again, and that was just a one time deal, and they wouldn't go on another deep run and all this other stuff. But by winning this round, they have proven that 2 years ago it wasn't a fluke, and that Luka, he is a great player, but now I think this enhances his legacy. He's not a championship, but it shows that Luka is definitely a legit player that can lead you on deep runs in the playoffs just by getting to a second conference finals in like the span of 2 years. That's pretty good for a young player. Luka is still really young. I think he might be 25, 26. Just I forget how old he is. But that's a great victory for the franchise, a positive thing to build on and to go even a step further. Now they kind of know that they can at least go into deep runs in the West. It'll be interesting to see who they play the next round. That's really going to determine to me whether or not they have a chance to go to the finals. Now, this game was awesome. It was competitive. This is what you want in a playoff game. You want both teams going at it and leaving it all out on the floor. And both teams did do that. To me, what was interesting was that the Thunder, they were up by double digits, I believe, like three times in this game. They got up, and it's like every time they went up by double digits, the Mavericks would just storm back in the game with their defense, getting some stops, making some key buckets, whatnot. And I felt this is where the Thunder's inexperience showed up. They couldn't weather the storm. I think that's the biggest thing in the playoffs is that, especially on the road, the home team is going to make us runs, but are you strong enough to overcome these runs and mentally can you make the right plays underneath pressure in the right situations to stop the bleeding? I don't I don't think well I would say I know the Thunder just weren't able to do that in this game. They couldn't stop the bleeding whenever the Mavs went on these runs to come back in the game. The Mavs would just storm back, and then they would have to rebuild the lead again. And just the same story happened like three times. Like just there was one point in time they were up 64 to I believe 48 in the third quarter, and that lead got diminished. And then they went up by I think like 10 or 12 again entering the fourth quarter. Mavericks just going on another run, and just they fell apart. I'll say this. Shea is a legit playoff performer. This guy is not the reason why the Thunder lost the game. He was great, just as great as you could have hoped him to be. 36 points on 14 to 25 shooting. He was also clutch when it really mattered. Just he almost single-handedly won this game with just his clutch shots and clutch playmaking during the final few minutes of this game. It looked like he was going to get this win, but it wasn't meant to be. And this is where his team showed their lack of experience. Their inexperience really cost them in this game. I think especially down the stretch, there was that final play that won the game for the Mavericks where Luka drives to the hole and then he loses the ball and he has to give a desperation pass to PJ Washington on the baseline. PJ takes this ugly looking three, but he gets fouled. He gets bailed out. And I forget who fouled him, but that was a huge foul because he was behind the 3-point line. Mavericks are down by, I believe, one in this game. And he gave the man three free throws, and the Thunder don't even have a timeout. So PJ just made two of those free throws. Mavericks go up by one. He misses the third one, but it doesn't matter since the Thunder does not have a timeout anymore. And that essentially just ended the game, ended their season. That's going to be a lesson to the Thunder during the summer that it comes down to execution. If you want to be a truly great team, you have to learn how to make the right plays and not to make mistakes during crucial stretches of the game. This is something they'll think about for a very long time. They'll definitely get better after this experience. There's a lot of mistakes they made throughout the series that if they had a little bit more experience, they probably don't make the same mistakes. But that's ultimately what cost them. It's why I originally picked against them before the series started. I thought their inexperience would be their undoing in the series. And it was. I felt Luka and Kyrie had just more experience than them, and it was going to rub off on their team to get them through the tough stretches of the series. And it definitely did. But if you're a Thunder fan, you can feel good about Shea. He really proved that he was a legit superstar MVP caliber player in these playoffs. He was great, and that's very promising when you look at your team's future. Chet, he struggled throughout the series, but this game was one of his good games, I would say, at least offensively. Rebounding, not so much, but there's room for improvement from him. But I think going forward, OKC is going to have to make that decision on getting a legit power forward. I don't think Jalen Williams is meant to be a power forward for them long term. Granted, he did have a good game tonight, but I still don't think he's the solution at that spot. They're going to have to look for a legit power forward and move to the 3, I think, going forward. That's just my opinion on it. Now with the Mavericks, I think who wins tomorrow with Minnesota and the Thunder will determine whether or not they can even get out of the West. That's the way I look at it. But that's all I have to say about it. And congrats to the Mavericks. Just let's see what they can do.